You're listening to Remotely We Are One, a podcast to help inspire others to take their lives back from the office commute. I'm Rick, a passionate beer rep who loves the industry but hates the commute.
And I'm Kaleem, a remote work advocate and consultant. We're going to speak with some of the top professionals who have managed to avoid the commute as they share stories from the most inspiring to the most comical, all while working remotely.
Man, this sounds exciting. Let's clock in.
Kaleem, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, man.
Good to be here.
Super cool, man. Super cool. I love your photo. Those locks look beautiful. You got
which one?
You know, when you hit the stop the camera, you know, your profile photo.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
You get... They're twice the size now. It's a lockdown haircut.
Nice.
Welcome back, everyone, to Remotely We Are One, a podcast that explores the ins and outs of remote work. I am your host, Rick, joined as always by my knowledgeable and esteemed colleague, Kaleem Clarkson. Hey, bud.
Bonjour, monsieur. Comment allez-vous, monsieur?
Oh. I'm so excited about this episode that I can't even speak French. What does that say?
I don't know why it's the only language that some lady told me when we were little, said, no one speaks Spanish, learn French. Can you believe that? Can you believe that shit?
Yeah, I can't believe it.
Oh my gosh. So I'm doing great, man. I'm excited. How you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm really pumped about today's episode. Tell us a little bit about who we're going to be learning from today.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I'm a little nervous here because the employee experience is really important to myself and my partner and what we do at Blend. And I'm just really excited to have today's guest. So I'm going to try to reduce some of the accomplishments our wonderful guest has had because there's so many. But here we go. Ranked by HR Magazine as one of the top 30 most influential HR thinkers. That's respect right there.
Absolutely.
It's featured by The Economist, BBC, Forbes, Reuters, HR publications worldwide. So he's been in that. Mm-hmm. He just won the Distinguished Achievement Award by Talent. Top 8 worldwide thinkers. And his client list is on point. His client list includes Microsoft, JP Morgan, FedEx, Ford, and the list just goes on. Something that most people don't know about it. He recently purchased a forest of that.
Forest?
Yeah.
Like woods?
Bought a bunch of woods. That's right.
Fantastic.
Right? You did just buy a forest, right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, boy.
Okay. And he's the founder and chief experience officer of the HEX organization. Sometime they call him Mr. Employee Experience, I saw. Mr. Ben Whitter.
Welcome, Ben.
Great to be here.
Everyone's going wild.
The audience goes crazy.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, we're excited to have you here, Ben. This is a huge opportunity for us, and I'm looking forward to learning from you.
Yeah, it's nice to be here, have a conversation at the end of the week. The actual awards for the Thinkers 50 was this week, and Netflix actually won it. So the founder of Netflix won. But I did finish in the top 8, which I was really pleased with this year. So that was incredible.
You should be very pleased. You kidding me? That's amazing. Yeah, it was hard getting through all those things. We had to cut out. We were like, yeah, we can't read all this shit. I mean, he's the man. Let's just put it that way. Let's just say he's legit. Where are you calling from?
England, Cheshire.
Nice. Oh, yeah. And by the way, we didn't even mention he's got 2 books out. I mean, I probably should have mentioned that. He's got 2 books out. One that we have read multiple times, not myself, but my partner, Employee Experience in 2019. It's a highly rated book on Amazon. Go get it. Employee Experience is great. And you have a new one out, right?
Yeah, so Employee Experience is now going for a 2nd edition, which is out in 2022. So that'll be coming with some new content and new case studies. And Human Experience at Work came out in May 2021. So that was written during the pandemic, which was a challenge and experience. But I think we put out something that was quite meaningful there.
Yeah.
Oh, without question. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about what that book is about? Because I have some questions about the Employee Experience book. So first,
It's like talking about Rocky 2 before you talked about Rocky 1.
Great analogy.
There we go. Okay, so then let's talk about Rocky 1. I love that. So there was something that I really liked, and I think it's early, even in your 4 that you have in your book, and you state that agility, empathy, service, and rapid response to change are now the most important drivers of success. I mean, I just love that. Could you explain to our listeners what you're really meaning by that?
So if we look at what we're going through right now in terms of a COVID pandemic, you could replace that with any global crisis and you would still have to react as a business. So the fact that organizations now need to pivot more quickly than they've ever had to before to catch up with whatever, it could be a geopolitical situation, it could be an environmental crisis, it could be a catastrophe that we haven't even expected, or it could be the pandemic that we're facing now. We have to make real-time decisions about the human experience. And this is what's driving a lot of businesses now. You know, how can we keep up with our employees and their experiences in society and bring some of that into the organization as well? Because if you don't, you're going to get left behind because employees are going to move on, whether it's social justice movements, whether it's changes in expectations or perceptions of different elements of organizational life. Organizations really do need to catch up. So that's what I kind of alluded to with Rocky 1, which was employee experience came and we're still in the midst of employee experiences going crazy around the world. Everyone's talking about the employee experience, but we haven't had that clear-cut victory yet. We haven't transformed the way management thinks about the workplace and organizations. They've had a taste with the pandemic and managing virtual teams, being more human-centered. But the sequel is very much about the human experience, you know, moving forward into the human experience.
Awesome. So could you maybe elaborate a little bit further in regard to what we have experienced in 2020? And have you come to realize that a lot of that is validated in your research?
I'll speak on behalf of the people of Earth and say it's been a complete shit show.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah, shit show is a good word. I love that one.
Universal language.
And it's so many diverse angles as well. Not everyone's getting the blame on this one, but it's absolutely shared equally among our politicians, our business leaders, people at different levels of the community, because we've lurched from one crisis to another in dealing with this pandemic, and no one's been really clear on the direction of travel. How are we going to manage this? There's been delays, there's been problems. So you can talk about all the stuff that is really adding up to say, look, this is a really bad place that we're all in and we're all experiencing, and it's very difficult. It's very, very challenging. If you are coping with that and you're going to work for a really poor employer with a very toxic manager, everything else is going to be compounded. Everything else is going to feel much worse. Absolutely. So it all adds up incrementally, and you face the Great Resignation. Many people in the US are resigning right now and leaving their jobs. 1 in 4 have the intention to resign in the next few months. You've just had the highest month or quarter of unemployment that's ever been recorded for a while. Yeah, so all these things are starting to build up now and say, okay, what's going on here? Well, we're starting to redefine the economy, but we're also redefining human life and how we experience it.
Ben, are you seeing the same thing in Europe as far as people just not, we used to have this joke of, I'm not going to take it anymore, and just walk out and tip a table over.
I'm
people
mad as hell.
I am pissed off, Johnny.
That was a terrible Dick Van Dyke accent, I've got to be honest.
No, I totally forgot about that. That's great. No, I was actually trying to do that accent. It's awesome. It's awesome.
Oh, Jolly, you're splendid, Roger.
Carry on.
We promised we wouldn't talk about tea. We promised it. We promised.
Yeah. I remember back in university, in the induction, we had some American students in the audience, and one of the ladies, so it was a big information sharing session about where is everything, what can you do, all that kind of thing. And the one question that stood out from that entire thing, and it lasted 20 odd years, she stuck her hand up and she went, "Can you tell me where the dumpsters are located?" Everyone was in fits of laughter because we call them kind of rubbish bins over here. It was,
oh my gosh.
The dumpsters.
But I've never seen an audience laugh so much for so long, just based on one innocent response. So it's
Oh my.
So kind of circling back, are you feeling, is this similar globally? You know, a lot of times we talk a lot about the US, but like remote work, I think that's the great thing about remote work that I'm attracted to, and I know Rick is too, is we've been really exposed to a lot of different cultures immediately globally. And that's the real curious part to me personally. And seeing yourself, seeing other practitioners out in Australia even, and some other places we've been to, a lot of the challenges are the same. Are you feeling like the employee experience is something that you've been talking about for a while, but now it's in the forefront, and now it's a competitive advantage to focus on that?
Yeah, huge. So when I was talking about employee experience it was probably 2014 that I went public with some research on employee experience in Asia across multinational organizations. So I ended up going from stage to stage, just really spreading the gospel. You know, this is the next big thing. This is where we need to focus. You know, move away from employee engagement. Let's focus on the experience to deliver the engagement. But I was the only one. I remember high-profile conferences in Asia, and there was no one talking about the experience of work. They were kind of dancing around the edges, talking about culture, talking about employee engagement, talking about happiness or whatnot, or the latest fad or program or technology that they're using. But they never specifically went into this zone of experience, the way that customer experience has done over the last decade or so.
Right. Everyone's all into customer experience, right?
Exactly. And that's transferred across the employee experience. And it's just been fascinating to watch the pace, and because actually 2014 to 16, it was relatively slow. There were some iconic global businesses that were embracing employee experience, but the rest of the economy seemed to be way behind. They had a positive intention. So it was always in the upper 90% kind of statistic that says it's really important. You know, then it dropped to about 30, 40% of we're actually going to do something about it. So it's been slow to catch on. But like you said, the last, say, since my book came out in 2019, it's seriously accelerated over the last few years, which has been fantastic. And now everyone's talking about it, which is absolutely wonderful for the economy, I would say.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to be honest, this whole experience has certainly opened my eyes, and it dawned on me. I've done a lot of things professionally. I've developed a lot of skills over the years, and I always thought that part of the reason was because I just wasn't happy doing what I was doing. So I kind of moved around a lot. But over the last 18 months, I've realized that probably 99% of the jobs that I have left weren't because I disliked the work I was doing. It's because my boss was an asshole, or he was a toxic person, or the management was just a group of shitty people that I just, I didn't want to work for anymore. And I kind of felt isolated because I wondered if it was just me. But then I looked back over some of the other people that I was working with, and they're no longer working with those people either. So now that I'm learning that it wasn't just me, that there is a toxic culture of management, at least in some of the instances, the question I have now is, where are we going with this? How is this going to get resolved?
Yeah, and that's a great question based on your experience, because you just your tone there and the way you described that, you could see you've still got feelings attached to the experience that you went through. Even the arsehole manager, which the worst thing as an organization employer, the worst thing you can do is give your employees poor management. If they have a manager that they don't respect, they don't like, they're not treated well by, it's a recipe for disaster. Even if you have the best in class technology, you may have the best employee experience possible, but if your leader's really poor, then all of that other stuff doesn't matter one little bit. You may have a world-class HR function.
Yeah.
Right.
But if you have a poor immediate manager, it doesn't make a jot of difference. And they can't intervene a lot of the time in that relationship. So it will go the way it always goes, and one person will leave. Sometimes a toxic manager leaves because the organization says, we've had enough of this shit, and we're not going to tolerate it anymore. And again, some of the best employee experience organizations do that. They draw a line in the sand and they say, well, every manager has to step over and become more human-centered. In every single thing that you do, every decision you make, you have to be thinking about the team members that you're working with, not them working for you as a little lackey or servant.
Yes.
Working with.
partnership right there, right?
Some will walk that line and they will be fine, absolutely fine. They'll move over into the new world, but some won't. And that's the people you've got to address. And sometimes you have to be really hard in terms of what you do with them, because there must be consequences for that type of behavior.
Ben, if you had to give a definition for our listeners of what the employee experience is, what's your quick definition of what that is?
For people outside of the field, I would say experience is literally everything. So it's every interaction, every moment, every single experience you have within the organization. And that's essentially it. Now, that could be a high quality experience or it could be a low quality experience, but that experience is going to deliver outcomes, positive or negative. So experience is literally everything that you come into contact with in an organization. If you're a leader or practitioner, I would give a different definition, which is it's a high value, integrated, end-to-end experience that is creating exceptional business and human outcomes, engineered to the nth degree. So it's really about creating a stronger connection with people.
So if you could address, say, the guy, and I've been this person many times, if you could address the person who's saying, I'm better than this. I have way more skills. I don't want to be treated like this anymore. But, I'm making really good money. And now I'm at a crossroads. I have to figure out, is the money actually worth the way I'm living my life, the way I'm being treated? Or is there something out there that's better for me? What would you say to that person?
I would say always, in every single scenario within the human experience, it comes back to your own individual truth. So I talk about truth a lot within employee experience. So it's your purpose, your mission, and your values. That's where I would focus. And if there's a lack of alignment or there's some kind of stress that's affecting you to fulfill your truth and deliver it, whatever you choose for yourself in terms of your purpose, your mission, your values, then that's the time you need to make some serious choices about what you do and how you respond. A lot of people in that scenario would tolerate it for a bigger paycheck, and they'll go to, they'll buy material things that are important to them and whatnot and this and that. I think that some people get distracted by those things, and it doesn't lead to true, genuine, I wouldn't say happiness, but fulfillment. You're happy within yourself about whatever context you're in. Because I think in that circumstance, you can be happy with less pay. I've jumped ship from some employers to work in a better environment and a better context. And people looked at me like I had two heads, but it was the best decision I've ever made. Taking a pay cut was the best decision I've ever made.
A smile's better than a frown, no matter how much you get paid. I mean,
exactly.
You know what I mean? Like a smile's better than a frown. There's something that you said about, I think it was on like another podcast, the HR Exchange podcast. I think it was in April. And I just really like this, and again, I'm really thinking about from the employer's perspective, how much responsibility the employer must take for maintaining this experience. And I just love this phrase that you said. I thought it was just so great. It's something like, and I might mess it up, so stay with me, folks. All right? Don't hate on me if I bumbled this shit up. So he says, the employer needs to stay up to date on what's important to your employees today. If we're meeting the expectations today, those expectations are yesterday's expectations. Can you just kind of go down that path a little bit as far as like what you were explaining about the employee experience, continuous improvement and development? Can you explain a little bit about that? I love that phrase.
Yeah, I think this relates to just human progress generally. If you think about all the products and services we have, year on year, they're invariably improved. There's a new model coming out. There's a new laptop. There's a new package of software. There's a new way of doing things. So it's that constant evolution of the human experience. As we move forward and make progress and our technology is improved and enhanced, our expectations change. If you try if you say to your kids you're having movie night and you put on a VHS, it's, whoa, what's this? What's going on here? If you say you're going to stream a particular streaming service, and it's like, oh, yeah, that's just normal TV for these people. If you're growing up in the 90s and 80s like I was, it was very much, you had to put the tape in, you had to watch the movie, and then you had to rewind the tape, put the tape back in a box, and deliver it to a shop. And
be kind, please rewind.
Yeah, even like a telephone. Just thinking about the old telephone where you used to do the used to spin it round, or dialing up the internet. It's like you get those funny noises down the phone line and getting shouted at by your parents to turn it. Yeah,
you've got mail.
Yeah.
I got a $3,000 bill from America Online once when I was in college. America Online, I probably still owe that, but hopefully y'all forgave that over all your sales. But it was because, in college you're looking at websites you probably shouldn't be, you know what I mean?
And you're downloading music. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just left that shit on overnight because you had to log off. And if you didn't log off, it just kept charging you. And I don't know. Sorry,
it's amazing how much things have changed. Yeah,
$2,000 bill.
You've just mentioned the company, so just charge them now for sponsorship. That's the sponsorship fee.
Send them the bill.
Is AOL still around? Can you go to AOL.com still? Is it still up?
I don't know. They'll remember it, I'm sure.
Okay.
Yeah. With that amount of money, I'm sure they haven't forgotten.
I'm sorry.
So I had a quick question, and we've kind of alluded to it a little bit. It hasn't been brought up specifically, but as someone who has been so affected by some of these negative work experiences that have kind of indirectly been responsible for some of my anxiety and depression issues, are we far removed from a point where companies may be addressing those things in tandem with the way society is changing, so that what kind of culture you're going to be signing up for when you accept a job, because they say right up front, we will help you with these things. And a lot of companies are doing that already. But I think we're now nowhere near addressing the mental health issue that a lot of people are struggling with.
Good question.
Yeah. Not even scratching the surface of this one in terms of an adequate response. So there's some recent research came out in the UK that said employers during the pandemic, 96% of them now have support in place, resources, tools to support mental health issues in the workplace, which is fantastic. So that's 96%. But then if you look at what employers are actually saying, 16% believe that their employers are actually supporting them and caring about them. Mm-hmm. So 16%. Wow. So 96% they've commissioned in some, I don't know, it could be a workshop, it could be a service, it could be this, it could be that, it could be some bite-sized learning, it could be whatever it is. But then it drops significantly, massively so, when they reflect on the level of support that they feel they're getting from their employer. Now, if that doesn't tell you there's a big issue, nothing will. And that's the same reporting that we're getting from all different contexts around the world. There's a big gap between intention and execution on this issue. And the problem is, let's face it, the challenge is too big. They don't know what to do, so they buy things in, or they develop something just to do something, as opposed to delivering serious transformation across the holistic employee experience.
Mm-hmm. Making it look like the effort's being made, but they're not putting a whole lot of money or effort toward it in the end.
Yeah, and some of the best employee experiences I've seen and witnessed and observed myself, they don't have a lot of investment money-wise, but they had a lot of, a surplus of thought. That's the way I would phrase it. They had a surplus of thought. So that means that every experience was intentionally designed to support the holistic experience of work. So it was kind of that wraparound feeling that, you know what? My employer really does genuinely care about me, because they show it through all these different actions, all these different experiences. Now that versus an employer that just can't be asked putting the thought in, but they can buy a few things in. There's no competition whatsoever. Mm-hmm. It's not even fair. It's not even a fair game.
Yeah. So it sounds like to me there are organizations who have the wallet to do it, and then there are organizations who have the will to do it.
Yeah.
And, the organizations who have the will, who make it a priority, are the ones who are succeeding, which kind of lends me to another question we have, kind of connecting this to the remote employee experience. I'm really curious, and I invited you on the show for self-serving reasons, of course. You know,
of course.
I mean, I couldn't just invite you on the show for no reason. I'm super curious. I am like super curious as to what you think about the difference between the remote employee experience in a brick and mortar company versus the remote employee experience, and now what we're looking at as remote, location independent. What's the difference, or maybe if there isn't a difference, where does the magnifying glass kind of shift as to like what's important on that remote employee experience?
Yeah, again, it comes down to, you know, how mature is the organization with the employee experience generally. So are they really comfortable in their own skin? Because you can scale that remotely, you can scale that with a physical building. It's kind of swings and roundabouts in terms of getting that right. It's the fundamental foundational DNA. Is that strong enough? And are you building from that? If you're not, and everything's kind of haphazard, then you're going to have problems. So I would say there's not too much of a difference. You're still focused on getting in place a really good, strong relationship with employees. You just do it in different ways, you know, using technology, using different rituals and routines, building transparency across the organization, maybe in a different way than you would if you were all in the same building. So I'll give you two examples. So in my new book, I looked at specifically this issue because of the pandemic. And I said, okay, which companies have done really well in this space before the pandemic hit? And one is one of the fastest growing companies in Europe. Another was one of the fastest growing companies in Asia. And it was part of their DNA from day one. So they never had anything else. And they never knew anything different other than becoming a remote employer. So every action they took and decision was based on how do we strengthen relationships across the business, knowing that we will come together for high impact meetings, but most of the time it's you're on your own in terms of you have real freedom and autonomy to get your work done in the way that you feel is right. You still need to enable that through great technology, through a great community and mechanisms within the employee experience to strengthen and keep that growing stronger as you onboard new people and whatnot. But the basic principles are still there. You know, treating people like human beings, having good, strong, open, transparent communication with them, and making sure you're fully aligned to your business strategy. You know, that's the most important thing a business can do for its employees. If you say you're a human-centered business, but you tolerate inhumane leadership, then that's not a human-centered business. If you say you're about fairness and equity, but your pay practices are a disgrace, then that's not good business. So you have to be saying and doing what you say. And that's the way employee experience shines through as a different approach, because we hold people to account for the promises they make and the promises they deliver. And if there's any incongruency with that, then we take issue with it. And rightly, we should. And so should employees too.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing in short is that it doesn't matter if you're a brick and mortar or a remote work employer. If you don't establish and stick to the cultures that you want people to ascribe to, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. You're going to be either going against going against your word, or you're going to honor the values, whether you're a remote office or a brick and mortar.
Yeah, exactly. And we're gonna see some businesses get into some serious trouble with this in terms of market decline over the next few years. And because they've chosen the wrong thing based on what I call the truth, so their purpose, their mission, their values. Others have been completely aligned to it, and they've just continued to do it through the pandemic. They've put in that support, they've put in that extra effort and thought and care with the employee experience, and they'll reap the rewards.
I'm wondering what your thought is when I heard you talk about, like, as an organization, you have to ensure that you're meeting your employees' needs, their current needs, not their needs from years ago. What are your thoughts about organizations? You know, I just read recently that Apple again is going to require all their employees to return back to the office. What's your thought on organizations just completely ignoring some of the requests that their employees have made, which are better for their own employee experience? What's your thoughts to some of these organizations that are going to just go ahead and make the call as soon as everyone's a lot more comfortable getting back together and it's safe to get back together, that are going to force people back to the office? What's your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I've looked at quite a few examples that have done this, and there's some high-profile ones, especially that are making the news. And if it's part of their truth, if that's the type of business they are, then I would prefer an authentic, ruthless brand than an inauthentic, weak brand. If they're just being what they've already been and they're standing by what they've already been and what they intend to be in the future, I think that's fine. They're aligned to their truth. So, at companies, sometimes you're a family, sometimes you're a sports team, and it's ruthless. It's when they start trying to be a mixture of the two, and it confuses people around, well, you're giving us this great support, but when the shit hits the fan, you sack us or fire us immediately with no packages or no support, no nothing. It just doesn't make much sense. It doesn't make much business sense. So I would say, again, it's being guided by the truth of the business through this and through the difficult decisions. And companies like Apple that are maybe forcing employees back to the workplace, that may be perfectly reasonable in the context of their operations and their business. So a lot of justifications around collaboration. We need to be in the room collaborating on new products and new designs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So again, the employees could see that, and that it may be justified in some areas. But likewise, it's not going to go unnoticed if employees are not being listened to. And that's the key thing here, listening to employees. Not making every employee happy, because that's not our job. Happiness starts from within, as opposed to, we're not going to make our employers our puppet master. They're not in control of our lives and our minds and our hearts. So that's the way I would face it in terms of building the business, which is, let's really co-create something that works for the organization and the people. And let's try and find a way of approaching some compromises within that as well. Because we're going to be in a situation of experimentation and iteration. So that's my take on employee experience, which is this is never the finished experience. This is never the finished product. We're always iterating to make it even better.
It's always evolving.
Yeah, exactly. Apple may start with, okay, bring everyone back. It's a knee-jerk reaction. It's something that management feel really strongly about. If they get reactions from their staff or protests, which a lot of Silicon Valley have had to deal with over the last couple of years, even though they have some of the best workplaces on the planet, if they're experiencing high employee activism, it's showing there's a fundamental breakdown in the employment relationship, and they're not doing what they should be doing in terms of co-creation. And that's what's going to, it's going to hurt their brands. It's going to hurt their brands.
I love that word, co-creation. I think that's exactly the phrase, another phrase that we are going to borrow at your credit, Mr. Whitter. We just love it. Co-creation, when you're talking about, improving that experience, it's about involving others in that. It's just really, really great. Good stuff.
So, Ben, you mentioned several times there's a phrase that I want to circle back to because it is so simple, but I think it serves as the basis for all of humanity. It's not a work thing. And the phrase is align to your truth. I think that is so simple. And if somehow...
Hard too, though. Hard.
It's an enormous challenge. But I think that as we further evolve professionally as well as in our own selves, if we keep that in mind, it seems like that's the simplest approach that you can make with anything in life. And I was hoping you might be able to dive a little bit into how you, I don't want to say coined the phrase, but how did you arrive at that element?
A lot of experiences, a lot of challenges, a lot of learning. So I'm coming off a 20-plus year career in HR, and I've worked my way up like everyone else. So I've been a practitioner right up until 2017. So I was in the thick of it. And I've gone through the same challenges with, other issues around, sometimes I haven't been living my truth in certain organizations and it's been very difficult. Other times I've been absolutely on fire, completely aligned to my truth, delivering an exceptional performance. Employee of the Year, national award-winning performance. And you analyze these experiences and you wonder, what's the secret formula here? And when I look back and reflect on it, that's when I was most connected to my truth. So my real self, my inward expression of who I am and what I'm here to do in the world. And funnily enough, moving into HR enabled that because I wanted to serve businesses from that perspective, which was working with employees, helping them to fulfill the potential. So once that happened, up until that point, lots of arguments with lots of managers. But when
How many tables did you flip over? Did you tip a table over? Did you TIP it? Did you tip a table over?
There was one experience. I was working for a farmer in Queensland, Australia, and the way he was treating people was just disgraceful. Shouting, barking at them, giving them orders, and having really unrealistic expectations. So I kind of just, well, I can't remember what fruit we were picking at the time, but I threw it down, walked over to him and gave him a massive lecture in how he should treat people. Because the people that had no representation, they're either backpackers, students, or migrants, fresh from Iraq or other places. And it was like, we can't stand by and allow this to happen. And that's what some organizations get away with. They treat people poorly because there's no consequences. But he got a consequence that day because I gave him a rocket, that's for sure.
I'm sure. Oh, my gosh. Good for you. We've thrown a bunch of questions at you, Ben, and we certainly appreciate your insight. Can you tell us about a good story that you'd want to share with our audience about whether it's something funny or inspirational from your experiences?
I don't know. If we're talking about truth, or if we're talking about our own experience as human beings, I mean, there's always those defining moments in your career where you think, okay, yeah, I'm on the right track here. And I remember one time, and this is really quite personal. So I was being mentored by a HR director, and I just won all these awards and plaudits and all kinds of different accolades. And I remember the review I was having with him, and he kind of turned around and said, "Can't argue with your performance, brilliant, absolutely exceptional performance. But do you want to cut your hair?"
Okay. You weren't expecting that, I see.
So for our listeners, okay, this man has beautiful locks. I mean, they, I mean, these are their curls. I mean, they look good. They look good. So when someone's asking, just to ensure that you understand, like, this is part of who he is. Good hair is what he has. So go ahead, Ben. Go ahead, Ben.
I'm going to put that on my LinkedIn profile.
Yeah,
the good hair is what he has.
It's good hair is what he has. They're beautiful locks. They're shiny. They're curly. They have beautiful, loquacious curls.
So the example that went alongside that was when he goes to his annual HR conference, there's 800 people there. And the example he said to inspire me.
So wait. He tells you to cut your hair. What next?
Yeah, and then he says why. He justifies why he tells me to do that.
Okay, what did he say?
I think at the time he was trying to be helpful because some of the senior leaders were talking about the length of my hair, so he wanted to kind of relay that information in a way that I took on board, and I could, accelerate and progress my career. I could become like him and have a short haircut, perhaps.
Did you do it? Did you cut it?
Well, this is what was funny, because he gave the example. He says, when I'm going to my very serious HR management conference, I'm stood there and I look around, and out of 800 people, I only see one that looks like you. And I said, so you're saying I'm unique? He wasn't. He said, I stand out. That's what he was saying. But the way I took it was, actually, this is fuel, because standing out is not a bad thing in this world. And I just continued as well. I didn't cut a single hair off my head, and I've grown it even longer since. And now, this year, for the first time, I was invited to speak at that very conference he mentioned. Very serious, important HR conference, and I was one of the keynote speakers. So standing out is not a bad thing. Take that on board and do with it what you will.
That's a great story, man.
That is an amazing story. Ben Whitter, I cannot thank you enough for your insight. I've learned so much in this short episode. You've taken the time to hang with us, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, man.
No, great to be with you guys, and good luck with everything.
Yeah, thank you, and your amazing hair. So we're wondering where our followers might be able to find you, whether it's your website, your LinkedIn page, social media.
Yeah, plug what you got, Ben. Plug what you got.
Yeah, so both my books are available in the US on Amazon, so Employee Experience and Human Experience at Work. And you can find me at hexorganization with a Z.com. HEX
awesome.
organization.
Buy the books. They're really good, for real. We don't just say that when our guests are looking at us on camera. These are true statements. Hey, this is my truth. Get the book. It's my truth.
Wow. There it is again.
All right.
The golden nugget of this episode.
Thanks, Ben.
Awesome.
Later.
You've been listening to the Remotely We Are One podcast. Visit us at remotely1.com/podcast for upcoming episodes. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and download our episodes on your favorite podcast app.
Hey, don't forget to clock out.